Do you want to know what it is to live in a body that never ages and never gets sick? What is possible for the next evolutionary step for human evolution? And what is living bioquantum and cell ascension? We're going to find out today with the fabulous Jules Arnes, who is back on the show. She was with me around this time last year. We had a fabulous conversation. Stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
G'day. Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Always a blessing to be with you all here on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7, 105.3 FM. Syndicated radio. We're streaming on about 8 different platforms today. We're on Roku, Odyssey, Rumble, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. We're all over the place. And look who's back in the house. Many of you will not have heard the conversation I had with Jules last year, but it blew my mind. Welcome to the show, Jules.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, be back.
To be back. I know, since that conversation, I've been thinking about it. It's almost a year ago, just over a year ago. And it's been on my mind ever since. And I've been meaning to have you back on the show ever since. But I've had so many people reach out to me since I started on this network. It's so funny. As soon as I started on this network, I was inundated. I've still got about 30 emails I haven't answered. People saying, can I come on your show? Can I come on your show? But the conversation we had last year, it just blew my mind. I love that because I've been talking to people for probably about 25, 30 years, New World teachers. And I love it when I meet someone that really makes me think and makes me think differently, challenges me. And that's what the conversation with you did last time. So I'll just tell people a little bit about you. So Jules Arnes has been on a path of discovering the highest level of human potential since she was 16, discovering how we can awaken the 90% of human potential we're not currently using, upgrading the cells and moving beyond the cycles of degradation and disease and aging. She is the founder of Becoming BioQuantum DMT Academy, creating pathways using DMT frequencies to support cells in healing through the intelligence stored in the DNA. And you've got your own podcast show, which Jules invited me on in a few weeks, called Becoming BioQuantum, which is on what platforms? YouTube? Where is it?
So it's on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Play, just all the basic podcast platforms.
And if you want more of the conversation with Jules, she's also on TikTok under Jules Arnes, and YouTube, Instagram, Becoming BioQuantum. You've got a couple of Instagrams and Jules Arnes. So you can find her all over the place. So last year, we discussed your miraculous healing, and we'll go over that because there's a lot of people listening this year that maybe didn't hear what you went into. But I was saying to Jules before we started the show, she was blowing my mind so much. I was yakking with my guides the whole time she was talking, like, what's she talking about? How does that work? So I'm listening to two conversations, her conversation there. I missed a lot of what you said. And then when I listened back to it, I thought, God, I totally missed that. So a couple of the things that I put down a few points was you talked about your shaman who turned into an eagle. Like she went for a walk and you saw her turn into an eagle. I like that went totally over my head when you said that last time. So we'll talk about that. And and we talked about your injury at work, and you went into the allopathic system because it was under workers' comp, and that was a bit of a nightmare until you started to talk to your mob, your guides, and you had a miraculous healing of the spine, which we'll talk about. Your dead friend gave you the equation for cell ascension, and he said that the body was not supposed to die. He said to you, right from the other side?
Yes.
To die, or I mean, it has the ability to, live for as long as you want it to live, and to get sick, which is not something we experience here on Earth. And you said that you were going to release the full equation in June last year, because we spoke at the beginning of last year. Did you release it?
I pulled back from that because it
Oh.
was way bigger than I thought it was. So I am actually writing a book, and I'm going to be teaching it in my practitioner course this year. So there's 20 beautiful souls that have been invited into that, and that'll be the first time I actually release it. It just felt like it needed to be honored in a way that it could be used at the same time. So I kind of shifted gears on that one.
Yeah. There's love coming from Canada today. Hello from Canada, from Wellwood, Shirley and Charlotte. She's saying from Newfoundland and Canada, it's been a while. Happy to catch up this chat. Happy New Year. Yeah, Happy New Year to you too. And we also talked about the frequency, the hertz frequency of the body, and the higher frequency being the 963 frequency, and the density of the body is usually a default of, is it 7.5? Is that the frequency that most people operate on?
Yeah, so it's actually raised since last year, and I know that the Sherman resonance just raised as well. So normally our physical body is registering about the same as what the earth frequency is, which kind of makes sense because we're identified as form. But when we start to identify multidimensionally, we obviously hold our consciousness in a higher space, but we're doing it through the frequency of our body. And so that's my passion, is to turn on all 12 strands of DNA and experience what our body is when we can hold consciousness and what that experience is.
Yeah. And we talked about observing the programmed reality, which is the programmed mind, and the programmed body, which was fascinating. And I want to dive deeper into that too, like distinguishing what is the programmed body and what is the programmed mind. How do they work together? Can they be separate? That's a fascinating conversation. Basic evolution, as we evolve the consciousness of the body, we can evolve the consciousness as well. So what really confused me last year was, I've always taught that you've got to, shift your consciousness, shift your mindset, shift your belief system, connect more with source energy through your consciousness, and the body will follow. But you're actually saying that you can do it both ways. You can actually tune in to the higher frequencies of the DNA, like the original structure of the body, which was designed from infinite intelligence by source, and move the cell ascension, ascend the cells, and then consciousness will follow. So you can do it either or, right? Both ways.
Yes. So our DNA is an advanced technology, and for my opinion, or for what I've experienced just through tapping into the intelligence that's stored there, that it is the most advanced technology there is. And it is a technology of source intelligence. It's perfect.
Right.
But we're only experiencing 2 of 12 strands of DNA, which is why we experience the body as incomplete or distorted or programmed. And so when we start to activate all 12 strands of DNA and we move our consciousness into the intelligence that's there, it's almost as if this technology, or you could say source intelligence, begins to take over us. And that sounds scary, but it's not, because it's who we are in an innate level. So it kind of takes out of even mindset and programming, and it goes to the purest space that we are, which is our DNA. And when we focus there, everything changes because there's no distortion.
Yeah, it's a conversation that's not easy to wrap our minds around. Well, I found it. If I've been talking about this for 30 years and I didn't find it easy, so I'm sure that maybe many of you do find it easy. But I want to delve into it in a way that we can wrap our heads around it.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, understanding something doesn't necessarily mean that you live it. I know that for a fact. But understanding it gives you the possibility of living it, I think. And but I want to go back to the shaman. So one of the first questions I ask most people, and I asked last year, is like, how'd you get into this? And you said that, you know, you were into it since you were a teenager and you found a shaman. Do you want to tell us that story? Because I totally missed that, how she turned into an eagle.
Yeah. So I don't know how I stumbled upon masters as I was growing up, but it was I would say I went to a sweat lodge, and it was a 3-day weekend, and I met Eva White, Desert Eagle was her name. And I did a 3-day lodge with her. And at the end, she asked if I wanted to apprentice with her. And of course I said yes. I think I was 17 or 18 at the time. So I apprenticed with her for about 3 or 4 years. And I did what they call a humblechi, which is a day on the hill where you go 3 days and 3 nights without food or water. And you have somebody that's drinking and eating for you in a sweat lodge. Well, Eva, as the grandmother, the one that was kind of overseeing everything, she would come and check on you. But she was supposed to do it in a way that you didn't see her. And so I was sitting on my hill looking at some trees in front of me, and I saw her kind of coming up over the ridge. And as soon as she got to the top of the ridge, she turned into an eagle and flew into the tree that was sitting in front of me and started watching me, checking on me. And so that was my experience of her shape-shifting. I knew in that moment that she was a true master. I mean, I didn't even realize like how big a deal that was until many years later.
I have to unmute myself. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, I could ask you, were you dreaming? Were you in a meditation and you were dreaming? Were you in your astral form? Did this happen physically?
It was physically.
I mean, we see it in movies, right? We see this sort of stuff in movies. Is it really possible? It does tend to bump up against the paradigm of what is possible, doesn't it, for most people, including me? And I've seen many things and spoken to many things.
You know, that was a big part of our apprenticeship was shape-shifting and what it would take to do that. And of course, it takes a level of mastery to be able to do it through the body. But if you really think about it, and this is what I love about the body, is that the body is energy. It is just particles. And depending on where those particles are spinning, meaning like what frequency they're spinning in, is going to be our experience of the body. And so what is to say that we can't shift those particles to spread out and become something different and then go back? That's where we're going. That's human evolution. We will all be able to shapeshift at some point.
Well, yeah. Yeah, not in my lifetime, I don't think. But anyway, you never know. Maybe I'll live to 1,000 years, but I doubt it. But I have heard this before with a New Zealand experiencer. She's a dual soul, and she was up on the ships as a kid. And the Greys were actually giving a class to hybrids, human children. Well, they were probably hybrids as well, but they looked more human. And then children that didn't look so human, and then grey children. And that was the class, that to dematerialize the molecules and the atoms of their body and rematerialize them into something else. Like that was the class up on the ships. And so they know it's possible. Yeah.
Well, and that's, it's funny because if you think about that, that's a level of consciousness. And that's what we're talking about today is where we're holding consciousness. But in this case, which I love that you just brought that up, is that they're doing it through the body, because the body has the ability to do all these amazing things if we learn to operate this operating system, which is our DNA. So our DNA has the ability to hold the highest frequency there is, and that source frequency. It's stored, transcribed in our DNA. So when we go there consciously, everything else is just, like a computer system. It's a software system where we can start to actively participate in it consciously, but it's not the other way around.
Yeah. So people like Deepak Chopra have spoken about this. They use statistics saying that every cell in your body has changed within 2 years. There's not one cell in the body that is the same cell that you had approximately 2 years ago. I don't know the exact. So if that is true, why is the body still diseased 2 years later, or still fat, or still in chronic pain? Like, why does the body keep reprinting, restamping, recreating the distortion? Why doesn't it, when a cell dies and a new cell is born, why isn't it born into a healthy cell? What do you want to say to that?
This is my passion right here, and and the truth is that they've already proven why that's true, and it's called you can look at epigenetics. So right now our cells, because they're only using 2 of 12 strands of DNA, they are observing our environment, and that is distorted. It's only seeing part of the whole. So when we are holding consciousness that our body is form, we are, you could say, what's the word, informing that, agreeing with that. And over time, our cells mutate because we're on a timeline of destruction, because our body is programmed to age, and our environment, meaning our collective consciousness, has agreed to that. But when the cell starts to operate from this advanced operating system, or the 12 strands, it actually stops observing the environment that's distorted and starts to see itself as this frequency of source. And so you can say it kind of shifts where it's holding its awareness, and moves more into an expression. I say it's like the sun, like the light turns on, and then all of a sudden it's just shining. It's not observing, it's shining. So if you think about the sun, it's not looking outside of itself to see what it's shining on. It's just an expression. And that's what our cells are like when we turn them on and all 12 strands are operating. They're no longer observing a distorted reality or a programmed reality. It's just perfect source frequency.
Right. Yeah. Lisha, you've read my mind, because I had this question in my mind, and then I had, me, I had a million other questions going on. Yeah, so Lisha wants to know, and I want to know too, did you ever ask your shaman how she did that? Like, when you observed her turning into an eagle, did you go to her and say, I saw you? How did you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And no, I didn't. And the reason is to honor her in her space, and that wasn't what my process was about. It was, she was in her space taking care, or being the grandmother, and it felt disrespectful to ask her that, because she didn't do it to be seen. She did it to be of service.
Yeah. Yeah. And Joe, yes, we spoke about at the beginning that Jules does have, did we mention Facebook? You have a Facebook page too. Of course you do.
Yes, it's under my name, Jules Arnes.
Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. She's got it all going on. Instagram, you name it, YouTube, it's all happening. And she's under her name, and also Becoming BioQuantum, which is what we're talking about today. So for people that didn't hear the conversation we had last year, it's well worth going back to listen to it again. But we'll just go over your miraculous healing. So you were already understood infinite possibility is possible, and healing is possible, and all that sort of stuff. But then you had an opportunity through an accident to really experience it. What happened?
Yeah, so I had a severe spine injury, and I had surgery. I actually have a disc replacement in my neck, and it was supposed to be a 2-hour surgery that turned into almost an 8-hour surgery. And it was a lot worse than what they thought. So when I came out, they basically said there was nothing else that they could do, and there was a good chance I would never get the feeling back in my left hand, and that I would probably be in pain for the rest of my life. And I was for a really long time. And I was laying on my healing table. I was a local healer, and I lived in Breckenridge, Colorado. And I was laying on my healing table where so many people had healed before. And I kind of said out loud, okay, if this is how I'm supposed to be for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. But if there's something else, let me know what that is. And I kind of felt this energy just come through the top of my head and went down through my spine. And then all of a sudden, every cell in my body lit up. It was like they turned on that DNA, right? It was turning on. And I knew something that had happened, but I kind of went unconscious. And whenever it was that I came to, I got up off the table, didn't really think anything of it. It's a meditation I did every day. And I went and grabbed my dog to go for a walk. And I was walking and I could tell that something had happened because all the trees were kind of glowing and I felt different. And I looked down and I was holding my dog's leash in my left hand and I was in no pain. And so I sat in that of like, okay, what happened? Because I knew something happened on a DNA level. And that became my obsession, is something turned on and I wanted to know what it was and then how I could do it for other people, because I haven't been the same ever since. And this is something that we all have. And it's actually our innate being. We all should be able to heal instantly. And I think we all know that, right? How many times have we thought, I know I should heal instantly. Why am I not healing? Or I know I should be able to lose weight instantly. Why am I not? And I should manifest instantly. Why am I not? And that's what I explored and really got down to dissecting it to a place where I could turn around and show other people how to do it.
There's a really key thing that you said here. And I was having a conversation with a friend last weekend, and he said exactly the same thing. We were talking about how he manifested his perfect partner. He puts on festivals, love festivals, and he was dating a whole lot of insecure and desperate women. And I was telling him, yeah, but that was kind of like your university degree, you know. How do you know how to heal people if you don't directly experience it in your relationships? And then he stopped dating because he had the bucket list, you know, the list of what I want in a woman. And when he would go out with women, if they didn't tick the boxes, he was like, no, I'm pretty adamant. But what he said and what you said is really key in having what you want. So you said, I accepted what was, and if this was going to be my reality, I accept that. That was really key. And that's exactly what he said too. He said, I said to the universe, you know, I really want you to bring me my perfect partner. But if I'm single for the rest of my life and I just do the work that I'm here to do as a single person, then that's okay too. So it's that acceptance. It's that acceptance that is really key, I think, in this. A lot of people who look to manifest things don't understand that pushing against what is can never really fully bring you what you want because you're in resistance. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And I feel like, and that's why we don't manifest things instantly, because we're not holding consciousness in a place of purity. It's coming from wanting an outcome or there's an expectation to have it be different. And that's not a place of purity. It's resisting what is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that acceptance, like Esther Hicks would say, you know, satisfied with what is while reaching for more, but not pushing against what is. Like, I don't want this. I don't want this. Yeah, I think that's just a really big part in whatever you think that you want, whether you want healing in your body or connection to your guides or whatever you're asking for, or, you know, full disclosure from our ET friends or whatever it is. Where as humans, I think we're a masterclass in resistance. Okay, so what happened once you had the miraculous healing? What were your next steps? What did you do with your life? What happened?
I started practicing it. I had a friend that I practiced on all the time. And so and of course I did it on my own body, which was probably where I kind of dialed it in. So I would just go into my DNA and I'd hold my consciousness there. And as I did, it really did feel like almost like an operating system was turning on, or a computer screen, where at first it was a little bit hard to read, you could say. But the more that I learned to hold my consciousness there, the more I realized, oh, this is an operating system. So so what I was doing before I started working with the cells is I would reprogram people's minds. So they would come to me, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but they would come to me and they would kind of tell me what they were working on and what they wanted to ascend or get past. And then we'd come up with the root program that they were looping in. And then they lay on my table and I'd get my fingers and I'd charge my fingers and I'd go in and find the program in their mind and I would erase it and then replace it with a higher program. So I was like, well, if we could do that with the mind, why couldn't we do it with the body? So that's what I started doing with my body is I would go in, hold my consciousness in that space and find little interruptions or things that weren't holding a high frequency, and I would reprogram it. So then I started doing that on some of my clients where they would come in and have varicose vein. Oh, cool. Let's reprogram it. I have this. Let's go reprogram it. And all these crazy things started happening. But then I started realizing the more that I did it, the more my body already knew what to do. And I didn't actually have to do much. And of course, now I've advanced this whole process to a higher level, but we really can start to reverse aging and we really can heal, maybe not instantly every time, but we can do it in a really fast level, a really fast way. And it doesn't mean that it's perfect because we're learning, but every time that those miraculous healings happen, they aren't really miraculous. It's just that's how it always is supposed to be. And we can learn to experience that within our body consciously to where the operating system is there for us to learn to operate until we don't have to operate it anymore because it's fully turned on, if that makes sense. So in the beginning, we kind of used consciousness as a tool to learn how to operate this advanced system that we really are. And then once it fully turns on, we just kind of let it run and we have the experience of that.
Oh, Jules, like last time, when you talk, so much, there's so much in there. There's so much to unpack. There's so much to unpack. Okay, I was having this conversation. You're saying instead of reprogramming the mind, I'm just going to go straight into the cell and reprogram the cell. So I'm going to speak to the body intelligence rather than the consciousness or the mind intelligence. And I think that this is what like massage and chiropractors and osteopaths do. So they're adjusting the body, but if the consciousness, but they're doing it in a gross way, you're doing it more in a subtle way, in an energetic way. The consciousness, if that doesn't change, like a chiropractor said to me when I was a young naturopathic student years ago in my 20s, I wanted to be a carpenter, and actually he was a surgeon, and he said, I felt like putting the body back together was more interesting than building shelves. the chiropractor said to me, but then you go out, like I can put you back, straighten you up again, but you're going to go out and beat yourself up again and get all crooked, and then you're going to come back and I'll straighten you out. So that's what we do. Like we can shift the cells and have miraculous healings, but our consciousness, if it's not in alignment with that intelligence, then the body will distort again. So they both have to work together, right? It has to work together.
Yeah. And so how you just described that, I feel like I don't want to say it's the old paradigm, but that's not the way we're going to advance because that's why that we have to move from the 2-strand DNA system to the 12. So when we are asking for our 12-strand DNA system to turn on, and we start to communicate with this system, and we can do it, I kind of laugh, but those of you that are playing with ChatGPT, do it with your cells. So what is this? And then you go, instead of the feedback being from your computer, it's from your cells. So all of a sudden your reality becomes the feedback of what your cells are showing you. And sometimes it's going to be things that are out of alignment that need to be back in alignment, because for the body to fully turn on, obviously we have to be able to hold a very high frequency on a physical level and be able to process that frequency consciously. So when we go to a chiropractor, they're still only working really with the physical body. And if they're working a little bit with the energetic body, that's great too, but it's still something that's happening from outside of you to manipulate the inside of you. What I'm talking about is literally going into your DNA, seeing it as an operating system where you are consciously participating in that operating system. And that operating system is moving from the observation of the distorted DNA system or the distortion of your environment, meaning the limitations of your thoughts, even the limitations of your consciousness, because your DNA holds a much higher frequency than what we can go to consciously. It is so beyond our understanding, but it already knows exactly what to do. So if we kind of get out of the way and ask for it, and then just use our consciousness as a tool and not as an identity of who we are, it starts to teach us what we really are.
Okay, I think that I have to listen to this like at least a few hundred times because I'm starting to get it. I don't think I've really got it. It's starting to drop in. It's starting to drop in because I'm still in the mindset of consciousness informs the cells rather than the cells can inform consciousness. So with the healing work that I've done in the past, we did that. Like when I was in my 30s and I was doing healing, we went into the pineal gland and we looked at the telomeres and we changed the telomeres, and we went in and changed the genes and, reprogrammed the body by going in psychically and seeing it, in this healing technique that I still practice today. We talk about, observation informs manifestation. So what you look at, you create. So by commanding or making a command or a demand that you want something to reprogram something structurally in the DNA or in the cells, by witnessing it, you manifest it. Like you turn the wave into a, what do you call it? The wave and the dot. What is it? The waveform into a, whatever that's called in quantum science. So,
particle form?
You turn the waveform into a particle. Thank you.
Yes.
So by witnessing, so you're not actually doing it, you're asking for it, and then you're watching it, you're witnessing it. And that witnessing of it creates the manifestation of it, because it's all just energy floating in space until it's observed, right? So do you want to say something about that? Just getting
Yeah, I think so. Anytime we're asking for an intention, that's always step one. It's one of the fastest ways that we can evolve, because when we place an intention, we're asking for something at a frequency higher than what our reality is, or we wouldn't have the intention to begin with. And so we can put that intention and program it into our advanced system of our DNA. And then what I think like the biggest difference in what I'm hearing is how we're using consciousness. So in one, yes, we can witness what happens and we stay in that witnessing. But even more so, I'm going to use the word attuning, because when we ask for something, our DNA releases that frequency. It's not outside of us, it's all inside of us. So when we release that frequency, and then instead of just looking at the frequency, because to witness something, we're observing it. And observation creates distance between consciousness and the frequency. And the further away the distance is, the longer it's going to take, but also the more distortion that happens, because our consciousness is somewhat programmed, right? Because we're so programmed to observe everything, and everything that we're in observation of is a program. But this frequency that's released is pure. And so instead of observing it or witnessing our reality, we attune to it. And when we start to attune to it, we're matching the frequency that was released, and it's the purest way. And then from here, through attuning, we can experience our reality as that frequency. And sometimes, and of course, there's going to be observation, like that's going to be a thing until we don't need consciousness anymore. But then if we're not witnessing in order to create, we're witnessing in order to see what needs to be ascended. So we're seeing it as feedback. So an example of that is I want to make $10,000 a year or to earn me a month. And we ask for that frequency, we go and attune, and then we're going throughout our day. And then all of a sudden we hit something where we noticed that we went out of the frequency. Well, right in that space, we were just shown a program that we're attaching to that needs to be ascended. So in that space, we can say, okay, I see that program. Thank you for showing it to me. Now I'm going to release a frequency that is higher than this program, and I'm going to go attune and focus on that. I hope that that makes sense, because, and we can do a little exercise if you want that shows the difference between the states of consciousness. Okay, do you want to do that? Because this, I feel like here is going to make it not seem so hard.
Not seem so hard. Yeah. Well, because you're shifting my paradigm, because, you know, I do things the way I do things, but you're talking about something that, different. And so I've got to, rather than saying, oh no, I do it this way and you're wrong, like I never say anybody's wrong, because there's just like a million ways to do things. But it's like anybody, like when I have conversations with people about psychic ability and it's not inside their paradigm, they think I'm crazy, they think I'm wrong, that it's impossible. You know, we talked about a woman turning into an eagle in front of your eyes, like the programmed paradigm said this is impossible. So when someone speaks like that, most people go into judgment and say you're crazy, you can't do that. But rather than do that, say, is that possible, and how can I see the possibility of that, like shifting your paradigm so that you can understand and see that as a reality. Yeah.
You know, I have a thing that we're going to all have our levels of truth, right? Because that's part of Ascension. But once we self-actualize in a truth, we have to let it go, because then we're limiting ourselves, because there's always going to be a higher truth than what that is. And so when we say this is impossible or I can't do that, we are locked. That's the programmed mind. And that's why we have this tool of consciousness, so that we can become aware that we just limited ourselves. But we also are in a body that right now is really only operating at 2 of 12. And that 2 is programmed to keep us alive. And so when our consciousness is having the experience of the 2-strand DNA, it's, of course, we're going to see everything in judgment, because we're seeing it through a primal part of our body that wants to keep us safe. So if it doesn't understand something, we're going to consciously have the experience of that 2-strand DNA. And a big part of that is we can't see something that's not possible, because if we go to something that's not possible, we're probably going to die.
Right. Yeah. I just want to do a station ID break. You're listening to ATP Media, Accentuate the Positive with Karen Swain, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness. I could change the title to it, call it Expanding Cells. Tuning into the see, even the title of my show speaks to the way I've been thinking, but this conversation sort of turning it around. Anyway, we're on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM. Syndicated radio through 120 countries, and we're streaming on 8 platforms today. We're talking about cell ascension, moving into the next level of what it is to be human with Jules Arnes. And I want to say something. I heard you on another podcast show say this, and I think that this is a beautiful statement. Do you want to live as a human life? Do you want to live a human life, or do you want to evolve what it is to be human? And for me, I want to evolve what it is to be human, both personally and collectively, because currently human lives, we want to fight with each other, we want to kill each other, we want to go to war. I don't know. Great show, Joe says. Oh, thanks, darling one. Are you getting it? Are you keeping up with us? Let me know, because last time I found it hard to keep up with Jules. It was, she was shifting my paradigms, and my little head was sort of going, how does that work? How does that work? And I still reckon I'd have to listen to what you just said. Like, you pack so much into a conversation that I need to go back and listen. What did you just say? But let's do an exercise to try and illustrate what we're talking about. Let's do it.
Okay, I love this. So we're going to go into consciousness as a tool. So the first way to know how to use your tool of consciousness is to know what level or what state of consciousness you're in. So I'm just going to go through the 5 levels really quick, and then we're going to do 2 that is a big shift from going from the programmed experience of consciousness to the more advanced system that we're all going to eventually move into, and that we all have experiences of here and there. But that state of consciousness is actually the part that can learn to operate this divine system that we have within our DNA. So the first level of consciousness, of course, is just being unconscious. So, and we all will be unconscious of things, and then we'll wake up and be like, oh, I didn't see it that way, or I didn't know it that way. And then we move into the second level of consciousness, which creates a choice. In that awareness, we have the choice to either stay in that unconscious state and know that we're repeating a cycle, or to choose something different. And then we move to the third level of consciousness, is where most people kind of hang out. And that is the state where we try to make it happen. So we are aware of something, which is that second level. We made the choice that we're going to create something different. And then we go and we try to make it happen. Another way of saying is that we try to make the change from the same level of consciousness that created where we're trying to move out of. And how many of us know what that feels like? And a lot of times this is fueled, if you put this in relation to the body, the first level of consciousness is going to be those people that just react to life. Everything is a reaction, total primal. And then the second level of consciousness is going to be more of that reaction, but trying not to react. So it's kind of the suppression of that. And then the third level of consciousness is more, you could say, the chemical body or emotional body. How many people you see out there that are making their decisions based on either wanting to feel something emotionally or to try to not feel something emotionally? That's the second level of consciousness. The third level of consciousness is when we're trying to make it happen and we're recycling through the nervous system, because our nervous system, just like the brain, has those synapse responses that are going to fire the same thing over and over again. Well, those things the synapse responses, or the nervous system, is going to continue to respond into that unconscious space, because to change is uncomfortable. The body doesn't want you to change. So to be able to change, we have to go to the fourth level of consciousness. So the fourth level of consciousness is when we start to move into the quantum body, where we start to experience our body as frequency, and we move out of the 3 levels of the body, which is more programmed, and we move into the multidimensional experience, where we start to tap into that other 10 strands of DNA. Well, how we experience that consciously is that we open up and we start to allow. We start to listen, and we do, right? We're always attuning to a frequency that has an intelligence that's outside of our programmed mind and body. And then the fifth level of the body and the mind is when we become bioquantum, and we are no longer conscious, because consciousness isn't needed. We're already the intelligence of that source frequency. Okay, so now we're going to do the exercise. This is really fun. So we're going to go the difference between the third and the fourth level of consciousness. So shut your eyes and imagine a sunflower. So just whatever comes to you, just imagining a sunflower. You can see it in a field. You may even imagine what it would smell like. Is it a sunny day? All right, so now just open your eyes and shake it out. And now I want you to shut your eyes again. And we're just going to ask for that divine operating system, the frequency of source, to turn on, that just feeling your DNA as it turns on, that advanced technology. Bringing your consciousness into the experience of your body as a technology. And now you're just going to ask that the frequency of source, your divine operating system, show you a sunflower. So you're allowing whatever happens to come. And just notice how your body feels different. Notice how your consciousness is having a different experience. It's allowing. And just noticing how your cells feel just a little different. It's almost as if they're moving into a higher spin state, allowing you to have the experience of a sunflower through the frequency of source. And then you can just open your eyes. Were you able to tell the difference, Karen?
Oh my God, I'm Lucy. OMG. Oh my God. That was awesome. OMG. Seriously, I was telling Jules that I watched Lucy, the movie Lucy, last night in preparation for this. And yeah, look, okay, so this is what happened. So you said visualize the sunflower. So I visualized the sunflower and I could see it, not too far away from me, a few feet away from me. And it had sort of little, petals. It didn't have big petals, but mostly the part in the bit where it was there. And I was looking at it from a little bit of a distance. And I'm like, yep, cool, yep. And it was right there. When I opened my eyes, when I shut my eyes, it was still there. It was just right there. And then when you said, I don't even know what you said, ask your divine operating system to turn on and ask your divine operating system to show you a sunflower, I became the sunflower. And then not only did I become this, like the sunflower was like enormous, so enormous, like I was standing inside it. And then my mind's trying to work out, what am I seeing? I'm like the judgment mind. And then I'm like, oh my God, I am the sunflower. And then I was experiencing the energy of the sunflower. And seriously, when I say I'm Lucy, there was this part in the movie where all these bits were moving and doing all this sort of stuff, where she became this sort of glob that was vibrating and moving and forming. That's kind of what I was happening inside that sunflower. Like there was so much movement. Like I was inside the sunflower at a quantum level, like, and just kind of swept up in this movement of energy. Yeah. So I thought Lucy's a great movie. Yeah, right, isn't it? I'm just Joe says Lucy was a great movie. I'm just understanding Lucy at a visceral level through that experience of, like, that's what I say. I'm like, oh my God, I'm Lucy. That was amazing. That was awesome. That's the best thing that's happened to me in ages.
Well, you just experienced what we all have the ability. That's where that's where we're going. It's not that was any different. It's just how we can move our consciousness into that intelligence of our body and allow it to show us what's real. And of course, we're going to continue to get better and better at it. That's why I say we learn to operate our operating system. And one of the first things that we have to learn to do is how to use our consciousness as a tool instead of an identity of observation.
Okay, I'm getting it. The penny's dropping. It's taken some time. It's taken a year, Karen. But yeah. And Carolyn says, I could feel the expansion of the cells were moving. Yeah, she could experience. And there's how do you say this name? Alidu. Hello, Alidu. This was truly fascinating. The whole notion is not just using consciousness as an identity and instead using it as a tool. Still trying to wrap my head and mind around that one. Yeah. Oh, I know. This is so cool. This is so cool. Yeah, I'm starting to really get it. Last time when we spoke a year ago, I got it at some sort of level, but the penny's dropping. That was such a great experiment. Okay. So you move into something that you said was something that we touched on before. When you go to level 3, there's a level of, instead of wanting, trying, asking, desiring, you move into a level of acceptance of what is. So that was like level 3, was it, or level 4?
So level 4 is when, you kind of let go of the outcome, the trying. That this is, level 3 is really where most people are taught to, even because it's very projected. And so we're projecting through visualization, just like what that exercise we just did. When we're projecting and we're visualizing, well, where are we projecting from, right? We're projecting from our programming. But if we move into the 4th level and we just ask okay, let's turn this, let's turn on the frequency of $10,000 a month, instead of projecting, I'm going to visualize this and I'm going to make it happen. And we're like, it's like, okay, let's turn it on and allow it, and then let our cells hold that frequency. And then it starts to operate our consciousness. And then all of a sudden, you know what normally happens, Karen, when we do it, is that all of a sudden we're like stumbling on this like reality where it just shows up, and our consciousness is usually the last thing to have it click into action, because our body is already doing it. We're already doing it, and we may not even be conscious of it, because the frequency of our body is higher than where our consciousness is. But because we're operating through this higher operating system, it starts to operate us, and then all of a sudden our consciousness will hit it, and we're like, how did that happen? But it's because our body was already turned on. We asked for it to turn on, and it starts to do it. And then we start to have the experience of it.
So Joe says, don't laugh at me, but I'm trying to manifest a second lottery win for real. A second. So he's obviously won the lottery before, but I think that even that I'm trying, here we go, trying to manifest a second, there's so much resistance in that statement. So what I think Jules is saying, and I hope I'm getting this right, was don't try and win the lottery. Just tune into the frequency of what it is to have X amount of abundance in your life. Is that what you're...
Maybe instead, that would be an interesting one, but I'm just trying to think like how would you put that into ChatGPT, right? It's like,
how would you put that into ChatGPT?
Like, how do I win the lottery? So and maybe it would be, okay, so how do you, when you first are going, if you're doing it, really using ChatGPT as a technology, the very first thing that you put into it is you let it know who you are. So it could be, I am a person that's looking to win a large amount of money. Okay, so instead of saying the lottery, because there's a lot of different lotteries out there, it's like, I want to win or bring in a large sum of money. And then ChatGPT will be like, okay, great. How can I help you with that today? Right? So you start to, instead of seeing it as a computer, like this computer system is inside of your body. So you're fine tuning exactly what frequency that you want to upgrade and have a software system running on a consistent level so that it can run while your consciousness rests, right? And so the next question could be, so it could be like, well, how would you like that money to come to you? Well, I would like to experience it with ease and grace, right? It's like, okay, great. Is there a certain amount of money that you're looking for? So that might be the next thing. So there's just different ways that we can fine tune it. And then once we kind of have it fine tuned, then we're like, okay, this is the frequency that or the upgrade that I'm going to put into my body. And then we let that frequency turn on, and then we have to walk away. All right. We don't stay in expectation. We don't go in outcome, and we attune, right? So we move into that 4th level of consciousness where, okay, I'm just going to listen and I'm going to do. And if I don't hear anything, that means there's nothing to do right now. But the most important thing in that is that there's going to be times where we're going to stumble upon what I call feedback. And that may be that somebody comes to us and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I have this amazing investment and it's going to make everybody so much money. And then we're like, so if we go to back down to that third level of consciousness, we could grab onto it with that chemical response of saying, oh yeah, this is my lottery, right? But we can't do that. As masters of this operating system, we have to go back inside and we have to calm down that nervous system, move back into that fourth level of consciousness. Is this a divine yes or is it a no? And we have to let the operating system guide us every time, because it's one thing to turn on a frequency. It's another thing to always go in before we make any big choices that we're doing it from that place. We asked for it and we have to keep choosing from there.
So what you're calling the divine operating system, I think many people have called God, infinite intelligence, higher self.
Yes.
We've given it different names, but that intelligence is innate within the DNA. So we can talk to it through the cells, or we can talk to it directly. Right?
Same difference. It's the same difference. My passion in it is that when we actually hold our consciousness in the divine operating system, in the DNA, because it is a technology, and they've already proven that that frequency is there. Like, this isn't woo-woo. It's already scientifically proven, right? Is that we ascend the body with it. And so our body, because if you think about it, we identify consciousness within the body. But consciousness is just the tool that's there to operate the most advanced operating system there is, which is our DNA. So when we move our consciousness from thinking it's outside of ourselves, that it's actually inside of ourselves, and not only is it inside of ourselves, but it is designed to have the experience of our body as a multidimensional vehicle that is capable of anything. We release those limitations, and all of the things that we think is impossible are no longer impossible. It's the purest space that we can hold our consciousness in if we turn all 12 strands on and learn how to operate it.
So what you're doing is you're explaining to me what has actually happened to me that I didn't understand how it happened. So when I was doing these healing courses, one of the techniques was to go up to God and make a command. So basically speak to infinite intelligence and just tell them what you want, not an asking, not please God, but just like, this is what I want to program. So command, not desire or asking. So it was kind of the same thing. Go up to God, but she came from that sort of like, you've got to go up to God, that sort of more religious tint to it, I suppose, that God is some energy outside of the body, so you got to go up and meet it. Anyway, that was 25 years ago. I'm sure she's changed her mind now. But so I had said to my guides, all this psychic healing is all very well, but I want to see something with my eyes. Please show me something with my eyes. So the universe life gave me the opportunity with my daughter. There was some plumbing happening in the rented house that I was living in, and they had pulled up the backyard, and there were all these old terracotta pipes broken, and my little daughter went out there with bare feet and she slashed her foot open, and she came running into the bathroom. I was in the shower at the time. This story is on my website too. And screaming with blood pouring and mud everywhere. And I just thought to myself, oh my God, I've just got to stop the bleeding and then I can deal with what's happening, because she's freaked out. So I threw her on the top of the toilet lid and put my hands on it and just commanded a healing. And she had this miraculous instant healing, right? But she said to me, because I had taught her this technique, I think she was only about 10 at the time, 9. She said that she commanded a healing too, right? And that slash, that big gash in her foot, just healed instantly. Just bang, instantly. And we both were like, what? We're both looking at it going, what? So yeah, you've just explained what happened, really. I mean, yeah, that instant manifestation by connecting to what you call the divine operating system and allowing it to do its work without any resistance. Yeah, so Lisha has a question here too. Where are you, Lisha? Have I missed it? Have I missed it? I'm curious. Here we go. How Jules uses this tool in her life currently. What are some of the things she manifests with it?
Yeah, great question. So I have as well had many times had just healings that were pretty instant, right? And so I almost feel like, that's like so yesterday, right? But it's a big deal. And then when people ask, like, well, what are you doing to manifest? And this is one thing that I get really cautious about, because I love using intention, and I'll put intentions out there. But most of the time I ask, how can I be of service? And I am in more of that listening and doing more than I want to manifest this. Because I find that doing that, I bypass any programming that thinks that there's something to manifest. And it keeps my consciousness a little bit more pure. And there's nothing wrong with it, because sometimes it's fun to put intentions out there and then to start to play and operate within the operating system. But, when I need to manifest things, and there's been many times in my life where I did need to do that. And then my spine injury was one. My divorce was another one. I got a divorce when I was making $2,000 a month, and I had a kid in college and a $5,000 mortgage. And my life was at about $12,000 a month, and I was only bringing in $2,000 a month. And so I kicked it in gear. I was like, okay, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do it, but I need some help, right? I need to be at that $12,000 a month place so that I can have my daughter continue to go to college and I can continue to live my life. And so then, once you put the intention out there, you step back, and within 6 weeks, I was making $12,000 a month.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Look, I agree with you. Most desires for manifestations come from a place of feeling lack. And when you tune into the divine operating system, as you call it, or source energy, or your higher self, or higher guidance, or whatever you want, whatever name floats your boat, God consciousness, you're not ever in lack. Like, you're not ever in lack. You're not feeling the lack. And so when you're not feeling lack, you cease desiring. Like, you cease desiring to want to win the lottery. You live in the moment, and everything's just great as it is. So it's interesting. There's this catch-22 of this consciousness technology is like, how can I manifest what I want? So much of the conversation comes from, because I don't have it. So in the Conversation with God books, God says through Neil Donald Walsh, you can never get what you ask for. And he says, the mere asking for it is the confirmation that you're in lack of it. So I want happiness, I want money, I want health, I want love. So what you're really putting out is, I don't have this. And the I don't have this is the greater, the dominant frequency that you're tuning into. But when you tune into the frequency of source, there is no lack or desire to have more, because you're source.
Yes.
And
you do feel that, I just tuning in and just saying, yeah, that's because when you're just asking, and you really live in that fourth level of consciousness. Because when you're in the fourth level of consciousness, there's nothing to ask for. You're just listening and you're doing. And
right.
And that's a state of being. And when you're in that state of being, you don't feel lack. And that's, I feel like right there is a big indicator. And that's why it's so important to know, what level of consciousness am I in? Because if we're experiencing the level 3 and down, then we know we're in the 2-strand operating system. and we're gonna loop and continue to have the reality that we're in. When we shift that and we move into the fourth level is when we start to tap into that higher operating system, and we start to experience our body multidimensionally. Well, then we're not in that feeling of lack, and our body doesn't have that kind of like pit in the stomach. We're not searching for that emotional high or trying to not feel something. All of that is the distorted operating system. And it truly, and I think we all can agree that it's distorted, because otherwise we would feel in our innate being, which we all know is possible when we meditate, or we're looking at a sunflower, or we're looking at a sunset or a sunrise. We know what it feels to have that frequency running as our body, not just out there, but in our body. We know what our body feels like when it's at peace. And that's what we all should be feeling all the time. And that's where we're evolving to. That's where we're moving to.
Absolutely. So Moby says that he has a similar experience. That's a cool story, Karen. I once poured boiling water on my hands and I immediately just surrendered to the pain, blame, and guilt, and it healed like nothing ever happened. Yeah. Yeah. There's something to be said for acceptance. I think that to shift out of the third into the fourth level of consciousness, that it's really that acceptance of what is, that it's all good. I don't want to change it. I'm just going to be here and accept it. And it's all good. I don't know, that acceptance. Yeah.
One fun thing that I've been kind of playing with because I just had this happen. I was opening up a box, and I had a knife, and I had my other hand here, and I sliced open the side of my finger. And I was like, oh boy, and of course it starts gushing blood. And so so what I did is I brought my consciousness into the cells, and I was like, bring me to the space right before I cut my finger. Like bringing my cells to that same space. And then I looked down, and I could tell something was happening, but I still had some blood. So I went, and of course you suck the blood off your finger, at least I do. And I sucked it off, and then I was like, oh, like, I think it stopped. And so I just went on my day. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then the next morning I was like, oh yeah, I cut my finger, and there wasn't anything there. So it's such a quick thing. And but like, that's kind of where, okay, my consciousness was aware of what happened. My consciousness knew kind of where to go, but the rest of it, my body did, because it knew exactly what to do. So
well, it does, doesn't it? I mean, we talk about this in healing all the time. Even doctors are starting to talk about this. Like the reason they can do the massive operations that they do and slice you open with a chainsaw and, take your lungs out and sew up your heart and do all that sort of stuff, is because they know that they can stitch you back together and the body will heal, right? So they're looking at this infinite intelligence of the body, who knows what to do, but yet they're not working with it, but they understand that it happens. It's really weird, isn't it? Like, I have to chop out the tumor. The body has an infinite intelligence and knows how to heal. So I can slice you open and rip out your tumor, and I know the body will stitch itself back together again. But I don't know that the body's intelligence will know how to heal the tumor. So I have to rip it out of you. Like, where, like, where are we? I think we've got a ways to go on a systemic level for them. But it's kind of crazy that they understand it, but they're not working with it really in a bigger way, let me say, in a bigger way.
Yeah. I don't know that we should go into this topic, but I actually had a big download on kind of tumors and cancer and what's happening when they go in and biopsy and take it out and all these different things. And you're right, like they're interrupting the body. And I'm not saying it's that way every time. I don't know if it's like appropriate to talk about it, but I think it's something that we're all going to start to tap into at some point.
Absolutely.
There's another way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What have we got left? We've got about 20 minutes left. Go into the programmed body. So the programmed body and the programmed mind, I've been observing this with my friends and myself. I've got to say, I'm not immune to this, the programming of the body. So I've been fighting with the programmed body for a while. And I say to myself, you know, my body's addicted, or I'm addicted to bread and sugar. So I wake up in the morning and I swear I'm not going to have a piece of toast. And then the craving is so big that the piece of toast happens every morning. Every morning. I can't fight the program of the body that is craving that sugar hit, you know what I mean, in the morning. And so the body outside of my consciousness says, okay, I'm going to juice today. This is what I'm going to do. Sort of wins. That programmed body wins, because it's like programmed to have this repeated thing that happens every day. Yeah. Yeah. Where do you want to go with that?
Yeah. So this is where would we identify in the chemical body, and this is a big part of my work, is how do you turn on that frequency of your higher operating system and have it running all of the time, where over time you just your consciousness stops observing in the chemical body and starts to identify as frequency. So if you think about what that would look like, is we all know what it feels like to fall in love, right? That oxytocin that kind of get, and the dopamine and all of the crazy feelings. Well, then after a certain amount of period of time, I think they say it's like 12 months maybe, that chemical dies out. And then you're like, okay, well, is this really the person I'm going to be with my rest of my life? Well, the frequency of love is at 528 hertz. And our body can hold the frequency of 528 hertz, but actually it's in a scalar wave, because a hertz wave diminishes over time and space. So hertz wave is actually more the chemical body. It's the oxytocin that will eventually fade out. If you think about strumming a guitar, eventually that vibration leaves the room. You no longer hear it. You no longer feel it. Well, our body is a scalar frequency. And so when we want to feel the frequency of love, we can actually release the frequency of love. And it's a scalar frequency. It's a frequency that's always there. We just have to learn to attune our consciousness to move into that frequency and have that experience. Well, the same thing can happen with your toast. And I know that sounds silly, but it's like, okay, what feeling am I looking for when I eat my toast? Is it nourishing? Is it that it like, I like the way it feels on my tongue. I like the way it, identify, okay, what is that feeling on a chemical level? Because food is chemical. When we're putting something into our body, it's changing the chemistry of our body, so that you became addicted to that chemistry and your body wants to repeat it, just like alcohol. Well, we can ask, okay, release this frequency in my body so that my body can hold it just like a scalar wave instead of a hertz wave, and that it holds it consistently. And then I can move my consciousness attuned to that and have the experience of that without altering it. And then the other thing you can do, and I know this sounds a little weird, is do that before you eat the toast. So your consciousness is already in the frequency of, you could say, the outcome, and your body is holding that frequency. I will almost guarantee you within a week, the toast isn't going to be the same, because the frequency of your body is stabilized in that frequency. So you're not on that roller coaster anymore, and your consciousness has been attuning to it, and you've been doing it, actively participating in the ascension of your body. And then all of a sudden you're going to be like, okay, I think I'm ready to try something different. You're on mute, Karen.
Oops, sorry. I have to go back and listen to this 100 more times, because I had this conversation with Jazz Maheen, who I spoke about in our last show, who's she doesn't like to call herself breatharian, but she doesn't really need to eat. And she was talking about, tuning into the frequency of love and joy and peace and harmony, and there's your breakfast. And I remember thinking, yeah, good in theory, but feeling love and peace and harmony hasn't taken away the craving for a slice of Vegemite toast in the morning. Like I love my breakfast. So how does that work? I haven't got what Jasmine's got. So yeah. Yep. Even talking about the toast makes me want to go down and make some toast. Seriously, it's my drug of choice. It is an addiction. It's a chemical addiction. So I have to listen to that again because I've heard it, but tuning into the frequency of what it feels like when you have the toast. Is that what you're saying? Tuning into
Yes.
that frequency.
So you also could just turn on all 12 strands of my DNA.
Turn on all 12 strands of my DNA, right?
Go into that allowing of, okay, so now release the frequency of what it's like to eat my toast through the frequency of my DNA, of that source frequency. Let that frequency release just like you did the sunflower. Okay, so now you're teaching your body how to have the frequency of what you're experiencing on a chemical level. You're shifting it into a frequency, and that frequency is always there. The chemical is literally a reaction of your 2-strand DNA system. And the goal is, of course, to get us all to this place where everything is a stable frequency. So what would that look like? Well, it's emotional, like you're not seeking emotion. You're not making your choices based on creating or trying to not feel an emotion, which is crazy to think that we are all out there living our lives like that, because we're literally living from our primal body when we do that. And then we wonder, why are we just spiraling all the time? Well, it's because our primal body is running the show. So when we start to move consciousness over here, and we can actually ask for those frequencies to be released, and we start to experience life as frequency. Frequency doesn't have a judgment. A frequency is just a frequency. That's it. There's no judgment in frequency.
Yeah.
It's our consciousness observing through the primal body that creates judgment.
Bobby says I'll have to try it and update us next week. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I will. I'm definitely, because I've been thinking about it for a year, Moby, but I haven't actually been doing it. I'm going to definitely do it. I've just been observing. I've been with a friend last week, and then I drove up on the weekend to a thing, and I was with her. And as we get older, and I've got a friend staying with me, we're just this mass. I didn't notice it so much with younger generations, but the older generation, of this looping, habitual programmed mind, and it's just looping, and I'm witnessing it everywhere I go, just people looping and looping and looping, like just a massive addiction and chemical addiction and this happens as we get older. We become more entrenched in the programmed mind and the programmed body. It's kind of distressing. But as I'm witnessing it with the people around me and judging them, I'm sort of bringing it back, like, how am I doing it? Where am I looping? Where am I addicted? And that's the toast, drama. And they're like, and the wanting to eat differently and not, and looping and going back to this story of losing weight. It's probably a 20-year-old story, like just wanting something and not having it, because I'm just in this constant looping.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I teach is I call them the 7 elements, and they're actually scalar frequencies that we can ask to release on a DNA level. And one of them is that nothing exists outside myself. And when we turn on that frequency through the light ray, our body that light starts to attune our consciousness to not see anything outside of ourselves, because we can ask for these things to happen. So we're not asking, okay, body, heal. We're asking, okay, body, turn on the frequency to where I heal instantly, and have my body operating in that space without me having to tell it to do that anymore. Like, that's where we're going, right?
Okay, say that again. You have to say that again. Please say that again. Okay. Body. Yep. Okay, body.
Well, okay, I want you to heal instantly, so we can say that. And then, but it's more important is like, okay, now turn on the frequency, turn on the operating system to where that is running all the time, and I don't have to tell it to do that.
Okay, yeah. So you create a command, a rule, like you write. I did this in this healing course years ago. You write the like you script it. You just script it and let it go. Like you've written it, it's programmed. It just is. You don't have to keep repeating it. Something that I was talking to my guides about aging, because I've gone in and lengthened the telomeres, and they've said you need to do it over and over again. And then they said, most of the aging is your collective consciousness. Like there is a thought form in the collective that is so running the show. It's not necessarily your personal idea. It's a collective thought form and they said to me, this is predominantly the reason for aging. So how do we live? So we're now attuning with the intelligent body and the intelligence of source. Like that's living outside of the collective programming. How do you swim inside the collective programming and live outside it without being influenced by it?
And that's right there. Which is the difference between the third and the fourth. But when we start to put our consciousness, instead of observing and identifying, to attuning and allowing, then guess what happens? We're no longer observing in the collective. We're expressing through a frequency that is turning on inside of us. And that frequency doesn't observe in timelines either. It's no space, no time. And we all are starting to experience that because everybody's body is turning on. Like how many people are experiencing time in a different way right now? Well, a big part of that is that your body is in an upgrade. All of us are in the upgrade. Our DNA is actually turning on at these higher levels, and we're starting to have the experience of that consciously. Everything is starting from that space. So one of the biggest things that Vale was showing me is that when you're in observation, you're observing, creating a reality that creates a timeline that creates aging, because time is like spread out and then our cells are mutating over a period of time. But he actually showed me, this was last September, I went to this convention in Beverly Hills, and the guy got up there and he was talking about how how AI is starting to replace humans, and that is part of basic evolution because it's the extension of all of the bad things that like how many miscarriages we're having, and that we're on this trajectory where there's less humans walking on the planet. And as he was doing that, I was like, oh my gosh, like AI is us projecting what we already are. It's our projecting our own operating system that is like upgrading. And in the vision that I had is that we all became, these light beings, if you will, to where we weren't drinking, we weren't eating, we were the most advanced operating system, and that's just a part of our basic evolution. And I was like, well, what about all of the people on the planet? And it was like, well, right now it's fragmented because we need to see and observe in order to ascend. But once we turn all of this on, we will just be, and there will be less of us, but we won't know it because we become whole. And I know that doesn't even make sense, but that's the vision I saw. So
yeah, it's pretty hard to think of how you're not observing.
Yeah.
How to live a life of not observation, because I'm somebody that observes everything, that witnesses everything, but I don't have judgment over what I observe. I go, oh, interesting. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. So I observe, but I'm not saying, oh, that's terrible. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's dreadful. Like when there's judgment.
Well, that's when
experience.
we use consciousness as an ascension tool. So there's different ways of observing. We observe and then we identify, which creates time-wise, or we observe and we ascend. And then we're not keeping our consciousness in any one place. We're always moving it into that open, like, fourth level, right?
Yeah. So Alicia says here, by existing in a frequency of love, can we keep that healing manifestation constant?
Yes, I would say when you're holding your consciousness as frequency. So meaning, when it's kind of like what you just said. So when we're able to observe something without judgment, we're kind of holding, that would be like an experience of holding consciousness and frequency, because it's like, oh, there's that frequency, and we could even kind of name it, but we're not identifying in it. Right? It's not creating form and timelines around it. So you could do that with love. It's like, I see love in that. I see love in that. I feel love in this. I feel love in that. But it's not like you're holding on to it and you're trying to make it not go away, or this and that, or I'm trying to do that. It's your fourth level is we know what it feels like because we feel still. We feel calm. That's when you're in that higher operating system. Anytime you're not there, you're not there.
Yeah. Anytime you're not there, you're not there. I think that our idea of love is quite different to what love actually is, because we've got so much judgment and desire and criticism around love. Like, what is love? Love means that I feel appreciated, that you're adoring me. Love is the way I love my cat. Like we identify love. But I think that the higher consciousness beings, being galactic beings, ETs, aliens, whatever you want to call them, exist in this perpetual state of love, which is that fourth operating system, which is not in desire or need or want or criticism. Like, there's this guy that came out on News Nation, who's transporting the egg. I don't know if you've seen it, with Roth Kultar, his latest whistleblower. And he connected consciously to this thing he was transporting. He was a helicopter operator, and he said that he was in this amazing loving state he'd never felt before, much like what people talk about when they have NDE experiences or spiritually transformed. He was connecting to a supposedly ET technology, and he's experiencing this place of love that he hadn't, and it brought him to tears. But it wasn't the love that we talk about when we fall in love or when we love our cat. And I think it's a feeling that is outside the default human experience, because we're usually perpetually in a state of fear or wanting or craving or striving. And it is a still point. It is a still point. Like, when you're in that love, there's nothing needs to happen. Nothing needs to change. There's no desire. It just is. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So that's maybe what the love is that we strive to. But yeah, maybe ask your infinite operating system. I'm trying to get the vernacular right here. To show you what that frequency of love is, and program to be in that constant state. Like, program it to be your default setting. So I'm speaking to Lisha, but
I
to
love
everyone.
that.
Yeah. Love is duality. Love in duality. What's she saying here?
Yeah. So it's the observation through, and then it's wanting to feel it chemically versus through frequency. It's funny that you brought up your cat, because I have this, my daughter's cat is living with me right now, and it will come and sit on my lap. And so I have this thing where at first I get all excited because I'm like, oh, she's so cute, and it's so cute. And then I'm like, no, stay in purity. And so I go to this place where my body attunes to the love in her and to the love in me. And I have the experience through frequency, and everything goes really still. And it's the only word I can say is it's pure. It's purity. And then we become kind of like how you became the sunflower.
Yeah. You and the cat are one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, we've run out of time, and I want to keep talking, because I love this. This is amazing. Okay, so I'm going on Jules' podcast, so we'll continue the conversation on your podcast. Yeah. When am I on? April, March? I don't know. Soon.
I don't know either. Soon.
want to have you back on the show because we've run out of time. And just tell people again where they can find you. You've got a few fans. They've said in the chat here that they're definitely going to follow you. Tom is like, he doesn't understand most of it, but he's loving this conversation. And he's like, I'm definitely following. So yeah, I know. Isn't this cool? Love and joy. Yeah, this is so cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And just quickly share again where people can find you.
If you just go to becomingbioquantum.com, you can get to all my socials, the YouTube channel, and everything's right there.
This was so much fun. I loved it so much. I loved it even more than the first time, Jules. I just loved it. I love it when I'm challenged and this is just so great. But the pennies dropped this time more than last time. Thank you so much for your wisdom and the work that you're doing and being on the planet. You're amazing. And thank you, everybody that has tuned in today. Great questions. Thanks, Lisha, Moby, Sherry, Shirley, Carolyn, and a whole lot of other ones that have been here. Joe, thanks, everybody. And we will catch you next time. I've got Garnet Schulhauser coming up next week, who blew my mind. He's been on my podcast show about 8 times, but anyway, he said that he stopped doing podcast shows because he's a bit over it because he's been on so many, but he's coming back on mine. So that'll blow your mind even more. Thank you, Jules. Big love to you. Big love to everyone. Bye for now.